Welcome back, everyone. This is Coast to Coast AM. I'm George Knapp. That's ELO from way back in 1981. Hold on tight to your dream. That was, I think of these guys as a new band, but they've been around since 1992. They've sold 27 million albums. But if you talk to one of the co-founders, Tom Delonge, have a conversation with him, he doesn't talk a whole lot about music. He talks about UFOs and paranormal matters. He's formed a new website in the past year called Strange Times, dedicated to highlighting this with my guest, Tom Delonge, on Coast to Coast AM. This is Coast to Coast. I'm George Knapp. Well, welcome, if you will, Tom Delonge of Blink 182 to the program. Tom, good to have you on.
It's one that spoke for like this new Apple generation, and but yeah, we get along great. I think we get along better now than we ever did. Because now we have a lot more in common, to be honest, at this part in our life. Okay, because when you start a band, you usually kind of go, okay, I need a bass player. Okay, get that guy down the street. Oh, I need a drummer. Okay, my buddy knows a drummer. And you never really think about being in your 30s and trying to run it as a business and as friendship and as a rock band. There's a lot of compromise. It was funny, you join a band because you think more compromise than a normal job would. Like it's insane. So it's almost way more independent to go get a job. And that's also what makes that painting great, So, but it's just a delicate balance, and rock bands, And the other thing is, it's not like you're going to school and getting education, and then you start a band, and next thing you know, you got to make big decisions, and you're pretty much a mom and pop organization.
Well, I hesitate to ask this, but are you telling me you've become an adult? Are you over the whole rock star thing, or that never gets old, I would imagine?
It doesn't get old having people celebrate, your art. That's for sure. I guess I am an adult.
Have you had some kind of an experience somewhere way back when?
No, I don't. Not that I remember. I have a faint recollection of being a kid and seeing flashing, moving lights in the sky, small ones when I was up in Northern California. But I don't have a very specific memory. One thing that really I do remember, though, is walking through the grocery store after Whitley said that we were being visited, and there were people having these direct types of contact with these visitors. It was the first book that really put that out there, extraterrestrial on that. And it was an odd. Do you remember those first books? Because it was an odd kind of drawing of it.
Oh, I do. And I remember reading that many other people have had that same sort of reaction, sort of a semi-recognition of that alien that was on the cover.
So weird, right? So that was a really interesting moment. But I basically, it started when I was in the 7th grade, because I never, I got by through school not reading books at all. But now I read scores of them, which is funny, but at least I like the topics. But I never read books in junior high or high school. I somehow cheated my way through. But I remember in 7th grade having an hour to kill during the school day. So I went to the library and I first check from them and bought a computer specifically to go on the internet and research UFOs. And that was the very first thing that I did with my money, and I got deep into it. And I started coming in contact with what was his name? Glenn Campbell. Remember him? He's writing all this stuff about Area 51. I was like, wow, this is just great. This is like a reason to be here. There's a larger world out here,
So the idea that you're famous gives you an entry point to all kinds of people who are in the field.
Yeah, I absolutely. The story kind of it's interesting. So I started getting really into the whole UFO thing. Story is he's a small town doctor, but somehow he found all these guys across the United States, if not the world, and he was getting them on video. He had daughters in college at the time. He totally knew who I was, and they knew who I was, so I kind of used it. And I said, hey, can I want to fly you out to a show. I'm on tour right now. Let me fly you out. I want to talk to you. So he flies out, and he's got this backpack, and he has 100 hours of VHS tapes in his backpack of interviews with these people from NASA and Boeing and Northrop Grumman and the Vatican and astronauts, and the list goes on and on. And we started talking, and it was fascinating. This was one of my first people that I can actually sit down and have a good conversation about this topic. Well, we met a couple times, and then I said, you know what I want to do? I want to fly this guy out to L.A. I want to introduce him to some of my agents out there, because I am still to this day represented by one of the biggest agencies in LA, where they do like, they represent like Spielberg and Tom Cruise and everybody. So I was like, maybe this guy needs to tell a story to these agents out here. We need to make a movie about this and try to get the truth out here. And so specific, things that they've done with the UFO topic or whatever within their jobs in the government. So he gives me these tapes, and I'm kind of sketching out a little bit. I'm kind of, maybe because I think he said I was the only, because I was somewhat famous, he thought I would be a good person to give them to. So here I am with like 36 hours of tapes. I don't know what to do, so I'm like hiding them in my house. I'm like, I felt like these things were like radioactive. Like I was like, the government's totally out to get me or something. But then my phones start going crazy, and moved 4 times during this 3-year period. And each time I moved, my phones were totally messed up. And I kept wondering, what is wrong with my phones? Every house I go into, 'cause we would take Steve. I met Dr. Carol Rosin through him as well. Did you ever meet her?
No. I know who she is, but no, I haven't met her.
Well, Carol Rosin's, when World War II ended, basically the United States and Russia, or the Soviet Union, were out to steal all the scientists, because apparently in Nazi Germany they discovered quantum mechanics. They leapfrogged our science by 100 years because, one of the theories is they didn't like Jewish science. So and the odd thing is he was so driven, and he was so smart, and he would look you in the eye, and I met his wife and met his daughters, like normal, strange. I mean, everything about all that stuff, and he, even to this day, the Disclosure Project and all that, and he's created a lot of controversy. But I mean, there's a guy named Mark Pilkington interview, and it's a shame because I don't think it did it justice, to be honest, because the book is really truly great. And the book basically, this author started as I think he was a part of MUFON, and he was in all the circles of ufology, and basically what I think he figured out along the way over the few decades war game against a lot of different people for a lot of different reasons. And it was interesting too, because, not to digress, but there's another book that just came out. Annie Jacobson wrote that book about Area 51.
Area 51, yeah.
And she kind of had the same kind of, supposedly, she's from the LA Times, and in this book she was playing these games against us, and so the CIA said, we better jump in and play these games ourselves, just so at least we have control over this issue.
Well, I agree with you. I have my own take on Stephen Greer, because the work that he did in pulling all those witnesses together was a very valuable contribution to the field. They were very credible people who had important things to say, but then he took it another step that sort of destroyed a lot of his credibility in demanding the White Press Club that some people took seriously and covered honestly, and then he comes out with some pretty wacky stuff. We're hiding the fusion reactors and technology that will take us to the stars, and we've got secret treaties with aliens and stuff like that they did not take seriously. And I can tell you this, is that there was a project underway to open congressional hearings at the same time, but it really kicks into gear about a minute into this tune. Stay with us, everyone, on Coast to Coast. Once in a Lifetime by Talking Heads. I don't know if you remember this, but that was one of the songs that sort of put MTV. I have. Anyway, that's a great old song. We're talking with Tom Delonge, a musician and budding ufologist, who's created something called StrangeTimes.com, a website that highlights
are playing with people's minds, not only just people within the military, but civilians as well. And Jacques Vallée did some really interesting first parts of the 90s, where all of a sudden, there's these very unusually clear pieces of video and photos coming out of UFOs hovering over the bay there. And
Ed Walters, right? Ed Walters was
Ed Walters was the one that started it. But what's even more interesting was that 3 weeks before the invasion of Kuwait by Saddam's brigade, and the crazy thing was they were pulled over in a van without lights by a police officer in Gulf Breeze. They didn't have any driver's license or anything on them, and all they told the police officer was, like, don't phone this in. This is going to sign my death warrant. They said some crazy stuff, but he phoned it in, of course. And then next thing you know, the military called up, freaking out, saying, "Do not interrogate these guys." They shipped off the guys to one of the military installations that was nearby, and they all got apparently to the Gulf Breeze incident. And they were all speaking about Armageddon, and they were all speaking about the Antichrist and greeting alien spaceships and all this stuff. And out of nowhere, the local media gets this desert, a war that's about to happen and get back into the United States undetected through immigration and customs. And how did they elude the Army and the FBI for so long? And his whole point was this a planned deception aimed at an element of the armed forces as a test, or was it aimed at the American public as well? Doing a lot of different things with the human brain when it comes to this topic, and in my opinion, Stephen Greer matches that case perfectly. I mean, he is somehow so driven, meets all these people, films 100, 150 hours of videotape. It's just like any other big event. When you're putting out disinformation, the whole theory is that you have real information in it, and some of it's bad. So you have to pick. You have to watch who gets attracted to it to know what the real parts of it are. And I find it odd that he had guys that were sweating bullets that really worked for the Air Force, and he was doing something for somebody. There was a reason for the whole thing, but at the same time, he was kind of real. That's what I always tell people. If the universe is truthfully infinite, then there's infinite possibility, so you can't really discount anybody's idea of what's going on. Our experience and put it up on a blog we thought it would be funny, We didn't see anything, but man, you meet people out there that did. I was meeting one of the guys I was out there with him was a professor. Only me and my friend were messing around with it, but we wanted to see something too, It was funny. You know what's funny though? I'll tell you this. It was an interesting story. So at that time he gave me one of his whole kits of how you summon UFOs and stuff. So me and my friends thought it would be really funny to go. Me and two friends went out to the desert by ourselves, and we tried to do the whole thing. And then you listen to these tapes that kind of calm your brain down, and you focus on where you're at and all these different things. And here we are, we're doing this, and we're not really sober, if you know what I'm saying. Like it's not like it's this tape, okay? So we have mind you, the bugs. There's so many bugs because it's like in the middle of summer. So we didn't have any bug spray or any kind of anything like that. So all we had was like rolls of toilet paper in the back of my truck. So we're wrapping our faces in toilet paper. We look like mummies, right? And we're sitting there, and it's like about midnight. Strobe lights going on. We're about 3 hours from any normal highway. We're so far out there, and we're deep into this tape. And by this point, we got all the. It was really odd how that happened at that moment, at the perfect moment. There's nothing there, but it made it really interesting. At midnight, we jumped in the truck and got out of there. We got kind of scared. We're like, what do we do? What can happen?
You mentioned about Annie Jacobson's book on Area 51. I met her when she was working on the book, right at the time she started. I'm included in the book and some of the work we had done at Origin, this craft that was out there, because they even said they had beings that had come from somewhere else that spoke a language that they could not understand. And his story evolved, told to me a long time ago, became something different when it was told to Annie. Otherwise, and I believe that she is reporting it as it was told to her, and I think that the witness who talked to her is reporting it as it was told to him. But somewhere along the line, somebody messed around with the tale and the facts of it.
Well, what makes me this would be my take on that is that it seems that whenever something monumental is happening and the government is involved, what they tend to do, CIA and the Defense Intelligence Agency, is these big, huge, giant corporations that have strategists all day long thinking these things through. And I came to the same conclusion that whatever crashed in Roswell was nothing extraterrestrial, but it was remnants remnants of Nazi technology. The only Air Force, the only military base in the world that has nuclear weapons, and here's Stalin or whoever flying a craft directly over it. And so I think what they say is like, okay, go out and tell everybody it's an alien craft. Retract it. Go out and tell everybody it's a weather balloon. Let them all ponder about that. that at least they'll freak out and talk about those things and not really get to the conclusion that here we have the possibilities of another war after we just ended this other war. That to me makes sense. Everything else that he's following, but now we're past that. Now all those craft are out, and maybe the Air Force Office of Special Investigations isn't necessarily needing to conceal that game anymore, and so he can come out and say, no, okay, this is what it was. It was a Russian craft, but it was a scary one. I don't know.
I am open to all those possibilities because you look at all the big UFO cases. Roswell, the granddaddy UFO cover-up story, is so hopelessly polluted. The water is so muddied that I'm not sure we're ever going to be able to sort it out. It's a saucer. Even with really legitimate UFO cases that are not easily explained away at all. Somehow somebody comes out and muddies the water. I'm thinking of the Japan Airlines case or the planet Jupiter or something of that sort. So I suspect somebody out there is a lot better at muddying the waters than people like us are at getting to the actual truth.
I think so, and it's not a new thing. This anti-gravity, this whole idea of being able to use this type of a propulsion system has been around. Literally got of the deepest engineering groups within the United States for the defense industry. And I was showing them this thing that came out a few years ago called the Astra TR-3B, which is a black triangle craft that's all over YouTube, and not all over, but if you search it out, you see these UFO videos and pictures of a black triangle, and there's a light on each edge, and there's a light in the middle. And I was able to sit with these two guys not too long ago, and I was talking to them. I said, hey, I want to ask you guys something. And I'm all, look at this craft and tell me what you think. And I'm all, I don't need you guys to tell me. I'm not asking you to tell me anything you're not supposed to tell me, but it's my belief that America has been working on this craft, and I'm showing them the video for the last 30 years. It's my belief that there's counter-rotating magnets in this craft that displaces up to 90% of the mass of the vehicle. It's my belief that this is either remote-controlled or there is a pilot in there, but there's no centrifugal something, but this thing is unbelievable, and everyone thinks it's a UFO. But yes, our government has craft. How old is that? That thing was being created 20, 30 years ago is probably the first test flights, so who knows what we got now. They actually just discontinued those because the Raptors are so much more advanced.
So you're talking to a guy that lives a mile from where the Raptors are based, so I hear them every morning about 6:30 when they fire those big old engines up, and the F-117s are all in hangars out at Area 52, Tonopah Test Range. Yeah, you live right in the heart of where everything's happening. But I just think. But I mean, you know what? I was just thinking of something. I jotted down something earlier when we were talking. One of the things that Hold on, Tom. Tom, I'm going to interrupt you because we're going to a break. That music, telling us, oh, yeah, it's Elvis Costello, the other Elvis. The song is Mystery Dance, and it's not about dancing. We'll come back with Tom DeLonge, talk about the Illuminati and other UFO stories right after this on Coast to Coast AM. That's from 1979, The Clash, way back in 79, considered by Rolling Stone magazine to be one of the top 10 rock albums. And I'll tell you, the connection between those two worlds, rock music and UFOs, is a lot more common than you might think. It goes back to Jimi Hendrix and a lot of iconic artists from the 60s and 70s. Someone who knew them and who knows Tom as well is photographer Robert Knight, and we'll get him to chime in on some of these topics when we come back right after this.
The musicians are pretty open to a lot of this kind of stuff. We're pretty weird people, but not any weirder than the people that listen to this show. And I think that we have an opportunity to have more time to think about these types of things. When you travel for a living, you have more time to read books. You're up at nighttime a lot more often, and a lot of times you're alone, and you're seeing the world, and you're seeing the diversity of the world.
Oh man, there's Tom off on a UFO jag again.
My friends definitely say, "Oh my God, there's Tom." That aliens exist. That's so old. That's almost 15 years old. But it's so funny though because I have two bands. I have a band called Angels and Airwaves as well. And Angels and Airwaves is the band that started StrangeTimes.com, my site. And but when in Blink, I'm on my own bus. There's no one on there with me except my family, and they go home sometimes early, and a lot of times it's just me. But in Angels and Airwaves, I'll take the opportunity. In
fact, he introduced you and I, and a famed photographer. He's worked with artists, every major artist, recording artist in the world, in the rock world anyway. Robert, are you there?
I am indeed. Good evening.
Hey, tell me this. Is it even legitimate for me to be interviewing Tom DeLonge? Do you think that rock musicians have something to say about ufology? And do you think there is a connection of some sort when you consider the kinds of people that you have talked to who've had experiences or a great interest in this?
Well, I actually do, and I actually think rock musicians and people in the music and the film industry as a whole are the people that are going to be influenced by this long-term social manipulation program that Jack Valet seems to be alluding to, that there is some kind of long-term social manipulation of the public. And if you were going to influence anybody, politicians aren't making changes in the world, musicians are. If you think about Bono, and you think about Sting, and you think about Geldof, these people that put pressure on the world about South Africa or the Amazonian rainforest, or he told me, I have my finger on the youth of today, and it is true. He does. And when I met Tom and we talked, he had me come to one of the shows here in Las Vegas, and we got to spend quite a lot of time together talking. I was utterly shocked at his knowledge base, because I've been in this for 45 years, and Tom was every bit literate to what anybody else I know in the whether it's a ghost or a UFO or some other strange anomalous thing. But it seems to be, that this particular group of people, musicians, writers, poets, film,
assign you the title of being their spokesperson, but can you describe for me the level of interest among people in your age and younger in these kind of topics? Because I ask you the question in this context. I go to UFO conferences, not as many these days as I used to, but I see a lot of people in my age group are older, and not a whole lot of young people. And
that it's a strange universe we live in, and every few years there's something more magical happening with either our inventions that we make, or what technology can do, or what we find through Hubble. It's there's no end. I mean, here we are, like we are very close to the possibility of a 500 exoplanets that they think are possible life contenders. So the idea, 10 years ago was weird. 10 years ago it was like, oh yeah, you believe in aliens. Now it's like almost every scientist sounds like a moron if they don't say the universe has life everywhere, because it's just, it has to be there. Why else would it be there,
One other question for Robert Knight while he's here with us. Robert, do you get the same feeling? Are you encouraged for the future of research into these topics as you travel both in the rock and roll world and in the television world?
Yeah, I do, and I think you know that I've done and I'm still working on this Ingo Swann documentary, so I am in contact with all the people that were around the original remote viewing program. And funny enough, some of these people are the same people you hear in the UFO community. So I've been able to sit down with Jack Valet and Dr. Putoff and all of these people that were at the beginning of this. But last week I was in Austin and had dinner with Dr. Hal Putoff, and I said, Mr. Putoff, what is the implication of the breakdown of the Einstein theory of relativity with these CERN laboratories determining there are now particles that move faster than the speed of light? It's sort of breaking down the whole Einstein thing, and it's fantastic because now what's happening is quantum entanglement, the multiverse, multi-intersecting dimensions. All of this is becoming in the mainstream of science now, which means this is how remote viewing works. This is how things could come and go, that we would see, or through a dimensional thing. And it's coming and playing out in modern physics. So there's a lot of young people studying it. Young people seem to really, yes, we're close.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Robert. Appreciate it.
Bye-bye.
Tom, let's talk about the website. What started it? What's the purpose? Where do you want to take it?
I think it goes along the lines where you're asking me, are young people interested in these topics, and I think that all I do is I try to do as an artist I try to do things I'm passionate about, and the way I got into ufology and how that it somewhere it has to do with religion and relate to. And so we created StrangeTimes.com. It's and for people listening, my band Angels and Airwaves we think of ourselves as kind of a collection of artists or a production house, and we just put out a movie. We just put out a new record called Love, and then here we are with a Strange Times initiative, and the idea is to show all the incredible things that are happening around us every day that aren't on the headlines that should be the headlines, if that makes sense.
Well, and where does you want it to go? I mean, you want it to be the clearinghouse eventually?
I think so. I mean, the problem with a lot of the sites that deal with these topics, they're not presented in a way that I think people can trust the information, or presented in a way that will make people interested in coming back, or presented in a way to where it can be a brand that grows over time, that can gain credibility and one day be companies. And I learned this a long time ago about how to create things that can speak to this generation of young adults and teenagers. And I kind of thought, well, it might be about time to do that with these types of topics. And so I guess you were asking me where I wanted to go. I wanted to go all the way. I would love to see it be.
How does it work? I mean, who gathers the information? Who puts it together? How much hands-on do you have with the day-to-day layout of what's on the site?
Well, there's a small handful of people that created it. One of the things that Angels and Airways also created was this a platform, a piece of technology to run these websites called ModLife, and we have the ability to do like pay-per-view events and streaming video and all these different things that you don't see on the site right now, but they exist. So I already had that laying around, so we organized about 50, 60, maybe 70 different feeds of information that come in every day that we sift through and pick the ones that we think are interesting and valid for the brand. And I had a lot to do with it, and I continue to have a lot. Every once in a while, I'll go through and I'll find stories and send them over to the guy that puts them up, and I'm right about 30 different sites and try and find this information. Now I just go to Strange Times every day, and because I'm a fan, and I really mean that. Like it saves me a lot of time surfing the internet.
Well, I was going to ask you. I mean, this is not
that these types of media companies need to be a little bit different. So in my mind, it has to be something where it's associated with from day one. The plan has to be there. You don't have to have the revenue streams on day one, but you have to have a plan for them. You can't just go one day, oh my God, what do we do now? So we definitely have that. The people that go there and the brand itself, I think it's interesting to where, we have one T-shirt up right now, just right when we started. It's funny. It just has an alien hugging President Nixon and Elvis. It's like the buddies, and some guy was wearing it. I did a signing at a record store, and this guy's in line, and he's wearing this.
Pretty famous photo, not the one with the alien in it, but I guess that's a good way to get at the front of the line at the book signing, right? If he's wearing your shirt.
Yeah, absolutely, right.
The headlines today: space planes, psyops, secret prisons, 9 secret military programs you shouldn't know. Do you choose something like that? Do you veto something like that if you don't like it?
A little bit more by clicking on it, and then you can follow on to where it originated from, and it'll lead you into some dark corner of the internet.
So I wonder if this makes you part of the disinformation deprogramming.
Union Tribune newspaper, the big newspaper in San Diego, right after we took over Iraq, it was on the cover. It's a local company, SAIC, chooses government for Iraq. I was like, what? They do everything, right? So on this tape was this lady saying that her job within SAIC was to funnel billions or millions of dollars, one of the two, I can't remember, but into UFO-related programs. I thought that was a pretty red-hot testimony. So I'm going, okay, so where are they located? They're located in La Jolla, which is in one part of San Diego near the beach. So one day I decided to drive down there and see this building, So I pull up, and here you have this building, because
Tom, I'm going to interrupt you. Save that part of the story. That music tells us we're going into the break. The Beatles taking us into the break. We'll be back with his encounter of sorts with a company called SAIC. I should just add as a counterpoint, SAIC is so gigantic and is omnipresent. I'd be surprised to learn that they had some dealings with our favorite secret military base, not so secret military base, Area 51. Tom, continue your story as you head down to La Jolla to check this place out.
Yeah, so I'm quite interested in this building at this point. I'm sure of some secrets within the fake lake kind of pond in a rectangle right in the middle of it. And out of this rectangle pond is a gigantic. Now the building's about building's not 5-story. I apologize. It's like 2 or 3 stories tall. It's still big, but out of the pond is about a 5-story tall Egyptian obelisk coming out of the water. And on each are Egyptians sitting in thrones holding tetrahedrons in their hand. And on each one is a plaque. On one it says the past. And if you walk 100 yards to the other throne, there's an Egyptian holding and people from like Lucent Technologies and Intel. And it was really creepy, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, there's one of the guys who was on their board is Bobby Ray Inman, who was a U.S. Admiral who
asked me what I was doing, and I was reading some materials on UFOs. This was about 10 years ago. And I go, well, what do you do? And he worked for DARPA, the Defense Advanced Research Project Agency. And I said, I started telling him, some of the things that I knew. I said, you should write some of this down. He's all, I already am. He said, he grabs this piece of paper. He's writing down key things. He's all, who in the government would know what's going on with this issue? And I said, do you know who Bobby Ray Inman is? And he goes, I know him. And he goes, you're telling me that he's the guy.
Than I can afford, I think, to be riding with guys like that.
I've had some really interesting people. I mean, I've sat next to 2 really powerful senators. The guy from DARPA was really interesting, and a couple times, I've had some interesting run-ins, that's for sure.
Have you had any attacks on the site? Anybody mess with the site, take it down? Is there something you've posted that you think ruffled some feathers somewhere?
I will think that, I'll tell you something that not on my site, but I'll tell you one thing that really caught my friends, and I was trying to tell her. I always fill her in on some of these things, and at the time I was researching 9/11 in the World Trade Center, and I was convinced, along with a lot of it, came down and nothing touched it, and at the time, there was a physicist from the college out of Utah, the big Mormon college there. I forgot, but he was saying that they found nanotechnology thermite in the dust, and at the time of 9/11 in 2001, nanotechnology thermite was the only place in the world that had it was Lucent Technologies, which I think they were working out of the Pentagon at the time. So I was collecting all this information, and I was sending it over to be like going out and doing this stuff, like being a...
Well, you can read a lot into it because we've had more than our share of experiences and coincidences, in quotation marks, on Coast to Coast, dating back to Art Bell's days. He'd have people on and the show would crash, the boards would crash. I've had more than my share of unlucky moments in that regard, and I'm sure that there's an explanation for it, but sometimes it looks pretty strange. Let me ask you this. I've seen this online, a couple of your fans are downright harsh. Stating that correctly?
Our fans have noticed that stuff, and we do. There's a lot of that iconography associated with the band Angels and Airwaves, and it's something that we don't really talk about specifically because I think that the treasure hunt is there for people to find as they get into the band and look into what it is we're trying to do with the music and with the films.
And is it sort of in part to create an aura of mystery?
Well, I think the thing that we do about the way you look at yourself and the way you look at the world around you, and by doing the types of things that we do and being a part of the things that we're a part of, it allows people to really take a lot of time to learn and understand what it is. And rather than just hearing the song on the radio and say, hey, I can sing it along, or I can sing along First Free Country for a free-thinking man, and the idea of tolerance, of not taking one religion over the other, and I think that when you look at some of those attributes, like we've really tried to put those strongly within the context of our art.
I'm sure there are people going to tear their
actors and any kind of group of individuals. I mean, it doesn't matter what it is, and from my point of view, I've always wanted to help out the ascension of man anyway. But you know what? That's debatable that I've ever done that, because when you really look at the career of Blink-182, we have definitely probably helped the de-evolution of the human.
Well, I can hear somebody saying, this guy's got delusions of grandeur if he's talking about such lofty goals as that, and he's just a rock star. Well, the whole point of it, I think, is it's chaos theory. It's like, you let a bowling ball loose and it'll hit one pin and it'll hit another and it'll hit another. And I think you just got to concentrate on these small units of measure around your own immediate life, and you do what you can to make those small little things little pieces of greatness, and those will continue on as you sleep, and solve world pieces. That's an issue. But you never know where it comes from, though. I think, as Robert Knight mentioned, Bob Geldof and what he did.
Yeah, no, I mean, look how huge Live Aid continent. That's the whole thing. Like Africa, it's like, I mean, look at all the bad people are getting hunted down with machetes, like women and children, but everyone's like concerned with the Middle East. But I just have a feeling as soon as we get through all this stuff in the Middle East, whether it's war and whatever it's going to be, we're going to have Africa to look forward to next, I guess.
War's a big business. They'll always find a place to sell weapons. That's my suspicion anyway.
Yeah.
Tell me this, what are the stories that grab you? Of the stories that you've published on strangetimes.com, what are the ones in the last year that really grab you personally, the top UFO stories that interest you, for example?
Well, I always find it, I've been really fascinated with, lately, with what Germany was doing, at the end of World War II. It became, I always try to tell people that there's a lot of truth in those Indians were doing in the last 2 years of World War II. I mean, I think it was Nick Cook that wrote that book, The Hunt for Zero Point. It was an amazing book because here's this guy that's the editor for Function. It starts to mess with life, and plants would die, and people would die, and all this weird stuff. And so I think a lot of those UFO, that for sure.
There's a lot of people who've sort of gone down that same rabbit hole. They're credible people who start looking for one thing and then get sucked into the world of ufology.
I had someone tell me one time that was definitely in the know. I mean, this is the kind of individual where people, that's kind of like, why? What's up there? What have we been mining?
Wait. He told you we've been mining on the moon for 30 years?
Absolutely. I mean, don't you find it? I think a lot of people at strange times. We were doing some stuff with NASA. NASA wanted to work with Angels and Airwaves, and we're flying in and out. And when we're out there pitching them on something, they went out to the hallway. Raised is, why did they come in and take that? What was the purpose of hiding that or making it so difficult to start all over again? And
it's so hard to tell a difference between what we have, what we probably have, and what we classically would consider to be a UFO from somewhere else. I mean, the line has been blurred.
That famous statement, and then Carl Sagan repeated it, or it came from, I can't remember. It's like any form of high technology would be indistinguishable from latest and greatest computer chips and metal alloys and just complete high strangeness of inventions, and I will bet every
desert now that's invisible, not just invisible to radar, but invisible altogether, and we'll talk about that as well, and we'll open up the phone line so your fans can call in questions for Tom DeLonge. This is Cream, SWLABR is the acronym for this song, and it's a good one. Stay with us on Coast to Coast AM. My friend and engineer Nathan found that song. Just call him Don. He used to work for SAIC, and he says that company moved its main headquarters to Virginia, right back near D.C. He reminds me that Jane's Weekly, back in July 1997, ran this article about SAIC, how it works with a company called EG&G on anti-gravitic propulsion systems. He says that he saw blueprints in 1972 for an anti-gravity thingamajig from Hughes Summa Corporation. Now, Hughes and Summa, of course, are pivotal in the development of Las Vegas. They were involved in all kinds of high-tech secret stuff. I should say also EG&G is the company that got the very first contract to run and operate Area 51. So
there's a lot about Hughes Aircraft and Martin Marietta, and before is Lockheed Martin, and it's like all these things they all point back to each other, and this is in the 70s he's talking about, right?
Coming interplanetary, just coming into the atmosphere and landing there at March Air Force Base. like on time, like timely, right there by like 6.
I don't quite know why they put it out there. I'm assuming they want other countries to see it, and I'm assuming they want other countries to ask a lot of questions about it and get a little scared. I think when you see this in photos and videos, it almost looks like it's out of Kubrick's 2001, like a monolith or something. But these things they fly on a completely different mechanism than an airplane. They can be silent. I mean, they don't need propellers. They don't have engines that make the normal type of noise. And they can toy with other aircraft and able to stream this feed. And the astronauts were all freaking out with what they saw out the window. And there's a UFO coming over the horizon of the Earth, and this is in low Earth orbit that changed directions. And then they came out and said it was ice particles and that whole kind of dance.
Right, I remember that.
But the point is that was a show for something, and I invest into Star Wars defense systems, and that's basically how SAIC makes its money.
Hey, Victor, are you still there? Victor's gone. I was just going to ask Victor how big this thing was that he saw out there near Blythe, because there was and I asked because back in the late 80s, a group called NIDS, the National Institute for Discovery Science, formed by Bob Bigelow and based here in Las Vegas, did an interesting study about the black triangle sightings all over the country, the predominance of them over high technology made here on Earth and controlled by our Air Force. And, Victor, I was wondering how big this thing was, like block out the sun or block out the sky kind of big, or what?
No, well, at the altitude I've seen it, it was coming. I was observing as I would see a red light with two white lights. The red light's blinking, and two white lights, approximately, I would say, it could have been like half a mile wide, okay? So as it was observed, it's always on nights where it's not a full moon.
Well,
and as it was coming down, about the time it got over the area I was at, it could have been outside of 2 football fields, okay? So knowing that the March Air Force Base is about maybe 2 miles, maybe 5 miles from where I was at, it obviously just took up a lot of space. And it would just black out the starlight.
Well, half a mile wide is a pretty damn big plane.
That's pretty big.
Absolutely, it's not a plane. It was definitely not a plane. And they're using that area because Blythe is like a good maybe 100 miles away from this area. And that whole valley is nothing in there but a prison. Okay? So after a certain time, the prison is locked down. So at 9:30, in comes another one. So after the prison's locked down, obviously, I'm seeing that there's got to be a flight pattern of every hour of these black triangular-shaped craft coming in, by just like a regular airport coming into March Air Force Base.
Wow.
I guess maybe call them a platform or something like that instead of a plane.
Yeah, what's interesting, I mean, there's been many UFO out in Stevensville and in Texas, those sightings that happen out there, the same kind of thing where there's craft that are a mile long or half a mile long. Those are, those are seen. And Art Bell, even years ago, when he was on the radio, was talking about a big black triangle that was massive like that out there near Rachel, Nevada. And it makes you wonder, that there's something that massive,
And it's called Hangar 18, by the way, coincidentally enough. Hey, Victor, thanks for that call. We're going to the wild card line. Cornelius in Louisiana. Good morning, Cornelius.
Good morning. I was just wondering, like you, George, you really investigate these things on UFOs and stuff like that. I was just wondering if Mr. Tom, if he's going to be on like Ancient Aliens. They had aliens and angels on tonight, so I'll take my answer off the air.
Okay.
I haven't been asked to be on that show. I think it's a wonderful show. I think that
the pyramid, it's like $4,000 or $5,000 or something, and won't happen again for another 5,000 years. And that sounds like a pretty cool trip, but I'm not expecting anything big to happen. What about you on that whole topic of 2012, end of the world, end of the Mayan calendar? You have any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, it seems that there's only 2 references, about this changing of this time, and it's very normal. I remember, I remember at the Millennium, my band played at Times Square, and everyone played Armageddon Truth, and Jacques Vallée specifically, that's what his whole study was about, and for the people listening that don't know who Jacques Vallée was, can't go up and talk to him. He's all, but what's more interesting to me is what it's doing to people. So he started studying the people that saw these things, and started to read.
We're going to jump down to east of the Rockies. Tanner in Ohio has been hanging on for a while. Good morning, Tanner.
Hey, how's it going?
Okay, what's on your mind?
This is a question for Tom. I actually have two questions. Tom, I actually had the opportunity to meet you over the summer at Blossom Music Center in Cleveland, Ohio. I was at the meet and greet, and I gave you a little green alien. Do you still happen to have that?
I probably do. I get a lot of gifts, and I keep them. I keep them in a big box in my house. So
especially aliens.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, that actually kind of the question before someone answered my question. My question was, what exactly do you think is going to happen on December 12th? 21st, 2012. Do you think it's going to involve any awakening on how the public views extraterrestrials, or some sort of awakening?
Well, my answer for you is what I think is in store for 2012 actually is really exciting. As we have Curiosity, the rover that's landing on Mars, is specifically looking for signs of life. So I think if there's ever an exciting year for an awakening, it's going to be 2012, to where we can say, yes, it looks like there are planets everywhere that potentially have water and life, and it looks like our next-door neighbor has some form of life right now. And that could just be some type of microbes or bacteria or a plant here and there. But I think there's going to be plants. I think there's going to be water. I think there's going to be algae. Okay, well, it's not really all about us. And we've all kind of known that, but at least science is now saying it.
Well, I have to agree with you. Confirmation of life somewhere else, especially if it turns out to be intelligent life, would be the biggest developed will. And that somehow they'd find a way to screw it up or put a blanket over it or something, because there are forces that just don't want people to take this stuff seriously. My opinion, anyway. Tanner,
I'm now 23 and playing 10 years strong, so thank you for that.
Right on.
And my question is, earlier you were talking about how 10 years ago, you would talk about the topics you guys have been talking about, and people would just put it off, and just say that, it's a load of crap, and now, it seems each year people are starting to believe it more and more. And my question basically is, where do you see the fate of humanity in like the next 100 years? Like what like as far as government and space travel and just stuff like that, I guess.
Well, I'm not. I don't know if I'm qualified to say, but the world got together and said we can never let something this evil happen again. So they really invested heavily into creating a world system, and a lot of people call it, the one world government, and then to me that can kind of spread these ideals, whether it's through goods and services and products or whatever. And I think if you look at technology and the way it's, we're developing and Kurzweil in our bodies, but we'll be able to have computers and machines that can think through issues with the human race a lot better and quicker, and find out it's not the best thing to do.
Sean, thank you for that call. I wish I shared Tom's optimism, but I don't know. That same kind of technology can be used for bad stuff, and it just seems like the people who run things are not always altruistic in their ultimate aims. Stay with us. More of your phone calls from my guest, Tom DeLonge, on Coast to Coast AM. That voice there sounds, and we'll get to as many of your questions as we can. Stay with us on Coast to Coast AM. Tom DeLonge, a suggestion about your website, strangetimes.com. I don't know if you heard our first hour guest, William Pepper, or whether you're involved or all that interested in assassination conspiracy theories, but the story he told about Sirhan and the evidence that they've accumulated, that's a pretty good one.
I didn't get the chance to hear it, but I know a little bit about it. And I one of the coolest things that ever happened to me, I remember that when it wasn't too many years ago, and I go, hello, and it's Tom DeLonge. I said, yes, well, this is Ted Kennedy.
Oh.
And I was like, what?
It's kind of a coincidence.
Like, hey, I'm here with John Kerry. We want you to come out and campaign with us. And that's how I started.
Caller Melissa in Indiana. Good morning, Melissa. How you doing?
Actually, it's Malin. I'm sort of nervous, and I wasn't expecting to get on, so I fudged a few things.
Okay, like your name and your state, or are you really in Indiana?
No, okay. Just my name. My name's Malin. I'm from Indiana.
Okay,
Anyways,
Malin.
I was going to ask, the next Angels and Airways...
doing the script right now, and the idea is to tackle dreams. There was a really interesting study that came out, I think it was at Stanford, where they were coming to the conclusion that when you dream and when you have nightmares, specifically to prepare you for that happening in real life. So that when it happens, you've already kind of ran the scenario.
On for a long time. JD, what's on your mind?
Oh, I appreciate all the music that Tom's been making for all the years, about the past 15, 17, 20 years.
Wow. Question, what was it?
JD, still there?
Yes, I am.
You want to repeat the question?
Tom, like I said, I appreciate all the music that's been coming out about the past 15, 18 years. It was Blink-182. Missed you on a civic tour here in Tulsa, Oklahoma. But I'm just curious, with all the information that you have and that you know all the death notes.
Trying to out some grand directive, but I do think that that myself and a few
book that's out, the autobiography of Ace Frehley from Kiss, where he mentions at the very end of the book that he may have recently had an alien abduction and that they left a burn mark in his yard, and pretty wild.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that Bud Hopkins and John Mack were doing extraordinary research into alien that happened down in South America. There's a guy that specifically came out, and it was called, his name, there's an abduction with a guy named 78, where they would take these helicopters that were outfitted with lights and spray stuff over these Latin American farmers and abduct them, and they would wake up, and this very specific paste together a story of what he thinks the government is actually doing with these abductions and with trying to understand how people would act in coming.
Difficult, and sometimes there are people who make it difficult on purpose. There are a lot of people that I've interviewed who've had abduction experiences and who have physical evidence and additional witnesses to back it up. Their stories sure sound real, and the explanations given for what might have happened to them are weak at some point. And I think that there are some of those things that are telling it as it happened. And I also believe your scenario that there are others who make things happen for psychological reasons, for who knows what reason.
An interdimensional kind of, not necessarily just a physical being traveling here from another planet. I think it's more complicated than that. I really don't believe that there's a very advanced civilization that will come and abduct a human being and accidentally burn them or accidentally scar them. But then there's that Dr. Lear that actually is finding
Dexters, skinwalkers, shapeshifters. I've been down that road myself. I agree with Jacques Vallée that if the solution to this mystery is something as simple as other beings traveling here health-wise, and we wish him very well. Thank you, Roger, for that call. And from Boulder City, right around the corner here in my neck of the woods, Al has a call and a question for Tom DeLonge.
Hey, George, how are you?
Okay, how's it going?
You got a great show. I probably won't be calling in again. It's going to be the first and only, and I want to listen in the future. But nice to meet Tom DeLonge. Tom?
Yes, sir.
I have to tell you something. You do have a purpose. You've been recruited. I think you have the country's best interest at heart. Like yourself, believe it or not, as a civilian, I believe you are protecting and serving this nation with some of the contacts and the information that you share. And I'm just going to tell you, at 67 years old, Cuban Missile Crisis, I was in the military. Gulf Breeze 87, Eglin Air Force Base myself. I live out here in Boulder City. I know about Area 51. I met people about Montauk Point and the Philadelphia experience and Brookhaven Lab in Suffolk County. If you take a look at Area 51, and you got Gulf Breeze Eglin, you got the Area 51 and the terrain we have here. You take Montauk Point, you got the Atlantic Ocean. I have to believe some of the people in civilian like yourself, George is a facilitator of communication with information, which I appreciate, George, your station. And I'm not making a speech for myself. For the people who never get on, I've been lucky to get on today. You must contribute and you must listen to the station because you will get more information and plausible deniability, blah, blah, blah. But my question to Tom, do you feel that you serve this well? Do you feel like you've been used, abused, or are you proud to serve with the information you have? I'm just going to listen to you now.
Thanks, Al.
Well, I have. It's funny. I've been through all the different iterations, scary things happening throughout the globe between all the different countries that are going on, and there really is a hidden series of wars that are happening in ways that you have to do the research to find it. But everyone's not all just hunky-dory and good friends. So I believe that there's a reason we're spending a lot of money in these channels. I believe that there's a reason we're hiding this technology, and I believe there's a reason that I think they make mistakes. I think they hurt people. I think they make some bad decisions. But I think overall, the United States and its partners are really trying to make these big moves of someone working for the CIA. They got him. I mean, you don't know what's going to happen to this guy, but he's in there in the middle of Tehran trying to spy for our well-being over here, and I plans and have all the money and all this stuff. And I think there's instances of people that make bad decisions, but I really do think that there's a lot of responsibility that goes in these channels.
You speak to a group and say you stick up for the people's right to know, and we need to know, and you got to spill the secrets. But you also have to question whether there might be keepers of the secret. You don't know if they're operating in their interests or in our interests. It's tough, and as you addressed earlier, Tom,
I think that if people really knew all the facts, if people really knew that someone was trying to smuggle in a nuclear weapon through Canada that had Russian parts, China, and all these, who knows? I'm just making this stuff up, but I think that those things are really happening. That becomes very, very scary, and I think it's like one of those things where you're in school and you think you're going to get in some big fist fight and you get that knot in your stomach. I couldn't imagine the knot in your stomach you get when you find out that there's another country doing its damnedest to either tear your economy down, tear down your banking systems, or sneak in some type of weapon, or do psychological warfare against you, or release a virus, or millions of people walking the street and no one really knew why. It's like that could have been, someone could have done that to us. And I think if that's what happened, that's another thing saying, okay, I think there's like a lot of those types of things that are happening. You have to look and kind of go, okay, well, this might be being perpetrated by somebody, and I don't.
Hey, well, Tom DeLonge, it has been a fascinating discussion. It's been a lot of fun. You're going to have to come out here to Nevada, and we can go run around the desert, and I'll show you a couple of places of interest.
Right. Well, I had such a fun time. I appreciate you having me on here.
Absolutely. It was great, and best of luck with the strange photographer friend and, of course, the Tom DeLonge. Merry Christmas, everyone. Happy holidays. Hope you have a good one. Talk to you next week. Bye.